Good afternoon. It's Camera Aspects. Welcome back. We've again decided to make a broadcast home to home, basically, rather than meeting up in a location. Michael's joined us in his lunchtime break. Thanks for joining me, Michael. How's things with you?
Good. Hectic, busy. Too busy for words, to be honest with you. I haven't had the time to really do much of what I wanted to do this week. So much so that even on Tuesday, I hadn't produced any content for a while. I thought, I'll take the train today, and I produced a bit of a behind-the-scenes video for my Sleeping Commuters blog. Didn't take long, but I just need to produce some content. So yeah, I did that for a bit of fun. So all on the commuters as well, so very time efficient. And what about yourself? How you been?
Yeah, I saw that video actually, and once again, a very good little presentation there. And it's intriguing how you go through the train and see these guys fast asleep, and taking the image from time to time. And it brings it round, in actual fact, to the main part of our discussion today, which is about street photography, because of previous shows that I've done on Live and Uncut, and I had a workshop over the weekend with I daren't call him a student, but anyway, that's probably the best way to describe it. And we were talking about the woes of street photography, so that's going to be our main subject today. But I just wanted to touch on some confusing articles that we've heard about and read about, and this thing about the Nikkei, the stock exchange in Japan, Nikkei, announcing that there was trouble at Panasonic, and that Panasonic were probably going to have to dismantle, or the announcement was they will dismantle the camera division. Yeah. Now, this really sent some alarm bells running through me, mainly because of they're so deeply involved with the Micro Four Thirds. They've got some great cameras out there. The GH5 had just been announced. You were looking at it in the photo show. My immediate thought was, well, let's go and read all about it. And there it was, all from Nikkei. It's saying that they're in trouble. Their profit losses are they're concerning them. They're going to have to restructure. They're going to have to cut the head count and all the sort of normal ramifications that you would get from a company in trouble. Only for 2 days later to Panasonic literally turn around and say, no, we're not going to dismantle the camera division. We're going to be looking at other aspects. And it really, I don't know, camera manufacturers seem to be in a little bit of turmoil at the moment. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I'll go back to the start. I think, first of all, I haven't caught up with the latest. So part one, I know about that. I saw the announcement. You shared that with me. And you and I did have a bit of a chat over Facebook on what that means, both for Panasonic, whether this is likely the route that Nikon will eventually go down, what speculated about what the restructure might bring about. Of course, how that would impact the likes of Olympus, both of them being in the same shared camp with the Micro Four Thirds format, and even sort of perhaps whether it is another camera company such as Nikon or Canon could jump in, buy shares, take some of that tech on, and use it in their own fields of technology.
But pretty much the same way as what Sony did with Olympus.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. It made me panic, not just from a purely selfish perspective, as in what does this mean for Olympus? Because, of course, with them sharing the Micro Four Thirds format development, costs are, you would imagine, shared as well. It kind of made me worry for videographers in general, because Panasonic, with their GH series of cameras, many people see them as a video camera first, stills camera second. Rightfully so, because they are very, triumphantly successful video cameras. You get a lot of bang for your buck with a Panasonic GH Micro Four Thirds camera. But then, like you say, to mention the announcement 2 days later, it kind of smacks to me that there was a generic announcement from someone at the top at Panasonic who had passed this communication on to the Nikkei. That was communicated. And then the second announcement a couple of days later was very much a reassurance to shareholders that, look, this very much consumer-facing division is doing pretty well, and that the product is actually pretty unique and in a good place, and actually has a very good platform to continue to do well as well. So, yeah, for me, it's reassuring. I am reassured by the reassuring statement.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is reassuring. Excuse the phone ringing just for a second, but I think this is where the confusing issues certainly come through from camera firms that really don't want to let too much out of the bag when they are hitting problems for whatever reason. It may be a total different problem in another division, which Panasonic is rippling its way through. So I think really, to a degree, without us wanting to get too much involved with hearsay, rumor, I think it's just one to keep an eye on. But one thing's for sure, with Panasonic being such a heavyweight in the 4/3 market, not only there with their cameras, but also Lumix and other sort of knock-on things from there, it's certainly one to keep an eye on. I think they're too big a firm really to, again, disappear. And yes, there is the possibility, who says that one of the bigger firms, dare I use that in inverted commas, may sort of step up to the plate and say, yeah, let's have a piece of the action and get involved with it. So I think the best thing to do is keep an eye on it.
I just want to add one thing there, Paul. I know that we've now mentioned in 2 consecutive shows, in fact, maybe even 3, maybe in our first show, we've mentioned Nikon and our perceived plight of Nikon. I just want to actually reassure anyone who watches and listens to this show that we haven't got anything against Nikon. And in fact,
Certainly not.
I hope Nikon actually come back stronger, because, of course, any kind of innovation in the market, no matter which form or firm or country or whatever the case may be that it comes from, it's good for the photography industry on a whole. And as I've said before, if a camera company, whether that's Nikon, Canon, Fuji, or whatever the case may be, released a camera that was compelling for me to go and use in place of what I currently use, that being Olympus, if it was financially suitable for me to do so, I would. I absolutely would. I am brand loyal. That said, if something were convincing enough to move, I would move. So we haven't got anything against Nikon, but
no, certainly nothing against Nikon. I'm a huge fan, and Nikon is the first camera really that I got into, and I have a love-hate relationship with Nikon, in the sense that I wish they had moved with the times and got involved. But all my manual cameras are SLR cameras are Nikon, and the only Yashica I've got is the twin lens.
Yeah, my point. We haven't got anything against Nikon. I think it's just our perception that they haven't moved with the times, or even indicated that they're going to move in, when I say the right direction, inverted commas like yourself, they haven't released a mirrorless camera, and that seems to be the way of going. And that can be debated and disagreed with as much as people want. However, look at the annual reports that get released from the likes of Petapix, from all those big companies. Fuji, Panasonic, Olympus, a few others have taken big slices of the pie. So they have.
The market is definitely for them to get back involved. Anyway, so the main part of our discussion today is about street photography. Now, as I was talking to you just before the show, a couple of shows back on my Live and Uncut show, I was very fortunate enough to speak to Scott Kelby of Kelby One. Things were going along quite swimmingly, talking about his business and everything else, and all of a sudden we started talking about street photography, and he really did hit home hard with me, where he said, yes, street photography, I think, is the first genre that will go. And I was really taken aback. He told a couple of stories of unfortunate events that he'd been involved with. He'd been approached by people and said, don't take that photograph, delete it from your camera, and so on and so forth. And I would hasten to add that I don't really consider Scott Kelby a street photographer, even though he does organise walkabouts, because of the gear that he uses. You know, he's generally an 18 to 300 type zoom lens user, or when he's on his travels. In terms of his business, in terms of photography business, he's a 100, 400, 600 with 2 times converters on with his Canon 1DX for his sport photography. He's not a guy to bung on a 28 or a 35 and get into the action that way.
He's a talented gentleman, and I'm sure that if he took it to and hit the streets with us, I'm sure he'd produce some stellar work. There's no doubt about that.
I think he could do, but you know, in terms of the way he was discussing, I think he was basically he's the type of photographer I would think that would prefer to be standing on the other side of the road and doing candid shots of guys on the other side. Anyway, go along stage further. A couple of guys agreed with what I was making the comment. I think street photography is very, very important aspect of photography, not only for the future of it, but for the future of people looking down and its documentation of it. Then I had another chat with a guest on my show, Alex Lambrecht, who almost said exactly the same thing, except his caveat: look at the type of photography that's being created and published. When you actually fact go on to places like Flickr and Instagram, in particular, those particular social sites, street photography becomes very mundane and, dare I say, boring, because there is very little imagination, very little storytelling, and very little sort of experimentation. It came to pass, excuse that, at the weekend when I was talking to this, the guy who was on the workshop with me, when we were talking about street photography, the values and how to go about it. And one thing that came across when I looked at his images was his photographs were very postcard indeed. And I said, look, we've got to start taking you away from the pretty picture. We've got to start looking at things like light, composition, and basically getting yourself out of the program mode, the professional mode of the camera, and start experimenting with the camera in aperture, shutter priority, and to manual. Then we see the article in Petapixel, which also talks about the possibility that we're seeing street photography and the demise of street photography. So that's my backup and the reasons why I thought we'd talk about it today. Well, I'll just throw it straight out to you. How do you see street photography in the past and how it's going?
Well, let me start with a statement. So as a photographer, whenever you pick up your first camera, immediately you're almost set upon the path to learn about the rule of thirds, composition, clean pictures, low ISO, the reciprocal rule, all those good things. Everything you need to learn to make a technically perfect picture. I think the fusion and the debate that surrounds and circles street photography is often not accurate, because street photography is not about perfection. It's quite simple in my mind. You mentioned their composition. I don't disagree that, of course, composition is the foundation of any strong image. However, look at the likes of Bruce Gilden. His photographs are, the shutter speed would, let's say, again, air quotes here, too slow, i.e. there's movement in the image.
Yeah.
The angles are unpleasing. A portrait photographer would cringe to see the 8 chins. The use of the flash and the sync speed, it's not correct, quote unquote. But again, street photography is not about perfection. What street photography is capturing a moment, a scene, a story with intent, with purpose, and as David Allen Harvey said at this photography show, with value. We spoke very briefly about my Sleeping Photographers community project at the start of this call here, and I'm not using this as an advert for that. But one thing that wasn't apparent to me when I started the project, for me, it was just a bit of fun, trying to use my time efficiently on my commute to work on the train, was it wasn't until someone like Valerie Jardin and yourself and Ken Lyons mentioned that actually this is pretty different, it's pretty new. And actually, yeah, it is. And again, I'm going to use air quotes, so anyone listening on the podcast can't see this. I'm going to say air quotes every time I go to use them. It's only on my iPhone, but is that really relevant? And I don't want to go off into too much of a tangent, so I'm going to bring myself back here. But the point being is that if people go out, as you say, with a big old camera and they're looking for technically perfect straight horizons, sharp as you can get, white eyes, rule of thirds, then they're going to be focusing on a dozen things that actually in street photography are way down the list of what makes a good street photograph. And that is why, as you mentioned, we see samey, mundane, dull, disinteresting, disconnecting, unengaging, and a lot of it on the internet. So that's my stance on street photography. It's not... No,
I totally agree with you. I think, and also another thing is, when you actually, in actual fact, study the masters of street photography, Henri Cartier-Bressons and William Egglestone and William Klein, Dido Moriyama as well, one of my huge favorites, and Sol Leiter as well, to mention. These are the guys that basically set the street photography standard. And I think a lot of people sort of say, as you say, they get a camera and say, well, I can do that, take the photograph, boom, and plaster it straight onto...
accessible form of photography, right? I mean,
it is.
Sports photography, think about wildlife photography, landscape photography. Landscape photography, if you want an interesting picture, you go somewhere interesting. Sports, you have to get pitch side. Wildlife, you have to go somewhere to do it. Street, step outside your front door, done.
And away you go. But as you say, the most imperative thing about that is you're looking, hoping to create a story, do some experimentation, not be worried, as David Allen Harvey put so beautifully, is shoot first, focus second, on his work. But no, it's interesting the way that certain individuals start saying, well, yeah, street photography is dying. And I think it's dying. They say it's dying because of the mundane stuff that we're seeing. And there's just loads of it out there. You go into Flickr or 500px and Instagram and do the street photography search, and you go through and there's a lot out there without sort of wishing to choose any other better word. It is quite boring. The regular pass,
without value, without intent, without
exactly
meaning,
right. The regular passerby. The only thing I would say is, as it was mentioned to me before, by a regular street photography, if you are going to do something try and create a project. You know, if it's going to
Yes.
be, if you like taking photographs of people on their mobile phones, then do that. Don't intersperse it with something else and it gets lost. Do some work as you've done on sleep. Do something on a given project, and I think that's when you start seeing the value of
well, that's when
street
the work
photography.
becomes intentional, right? That's exactly what
Yeah,
David
exactly.
Allen Harvey was saying. If you have
Exactly right.
one image in isolation that is blurry, out of focus, not sharp, composition is, you know, not correct, quote air quotes there, in isolation, that will be slated and labeled as all of those things. However, as part of a project, it becomes intentional. So you say people on their mobile phones, it's the most common image you'll see on any community.
Exactly
you
right.
go to your Flickrs, you go to your Facebook street photography communities, 9 or 8 out of 10 of the images will probably feature someone in a city in black and white on a mobile phone. And that's where you say, you know, you see the same dull and disinteresting images. The indirect answer to the question, or the statement, no, the question, is photography or street photography killing itself? I'd say it's not killing itself. I'd actually say it's more popular than ever. What I would say, however, is that owing to its accessibility and owing to the number of platforms, you know, to which we can share our work, our street photography work, we're just seeing more of the same. However, as always, the cream does rise to the top. It's just now a little bit harder for the cream to rise to the top because there's more of it.
Exactly. Yeah, very good point. Because really, if you look at the modern day guys, the Thomas Lutards, the Eric Kims, Valerie Jardin as well, we've got to mention her, that are doing great street photography work at the moment. They're the guys you've got to watch. And I also do think that sometimes people don't study street photography enough. Yeah, you can go and buy the books or the how to do books, but when you actually buy a book by a street photographer and see the work that they've created, I think that would help you. And as you say, it probably is because so many people are taking photographs on the street. Everyone's got a camera now, as we know. Hopefully the cream will rise to the cream. How do you make your photography better, though, in street photography? That's the $64,000 question, isn't it?
Well, I actually did a 2-part blog post on this. And
Yep.
to be honest with you, it probably could have been a 20-part blog post. It should have been a book, in fact.
Work on it.
I am.
Good.
So I did 6 tips, and then I actually invited Michael Pung along to give some advice on portraits, and then I invited yourself along as well to talk about training, because of course you offer your training sessions. Tip 1 from me, if we want to start talking about, you know, what makes a better street photograph, it's, for me, let's forget about technical for a second, because as I mentioned earlier, it's not about perfection. If you have that in the image, then great, that helps. That will certainly please more people, because people often, I'm going to use air quotes again here, we should have a little tally in the corner of the screen how many times
we should do. Should do.
People often don't get street photography, so when you talk about an image being blurry but still strong, they're not going to see that. But the first thing I would say is you've got to get closer to your subject. That's the first thing. The thing I see most often, other than the cliche people on the phone, other than the people on a cigarette break in an alleyway, all that good stuff, other than, you know, 99% of the work being black and white, it's people being too far away from the subject. And that means that it's not immediately clear what your subject is or who your subject is. It means the frame is invariably distracting because there are other things that argue and fight for attention. It means that there are bright spots that become a distraction as well. It means it becomes busy, messy. People often look at the frame and are confused as to what they are supposed to be looking at and what the intention of the image is. What are you showing us? Are we looking at the lady walking the dog, or the cigarette, or the person going past on a moped, or the writing on the shop on the sign next to her? And, you know, if that were me, let's take, we're not showing an image here. And of course, this is going out on the podcast as well. So I am only describing an image. So imagine, if you will, all of those subjects and other assets in a frame. What are you going to look at first? And I imagine that if we ask 10 people that question, they will all probably give different answers. The point being is here, if you want to make a street photograph stronger, make it clear what your subject is. And most of the time, I would advise you to get close in order to achieve that.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned there, because that's one of the things which came about in the workshop. The amount of times that I said to the guy, when you come to edit this photograph, you need to crop, and that's because it wasn't close enough. And that does happen quite a lot when you talk to people and you start reviewing photographs of students or friends they've done, and say, oh, they're asking you what your opinion is about it. So, well, I would crop this out and crop that. Get rid of the brighter spots on the side now.
So in continuation of the theme of getting close, let's go back again to talking about David Allen Harvey. He showed some documentary work that he had been commissioned to make, that he had been paid to do, and that he'd been invited along to do. He had permission to do it. And in those images he shared us of the Hanai women, the elderly women from their tribe who went free diving for these sort of delicacies, the shellfish and whatnot. I, apart from where it was very clearly intentional, didn't see him not fill the frame. So, for example, when he had 3 of the Hanai women sitting on the rocks with their scuba diving or snorkeling masks on, he filled the frame. He got close. Yes, when you're on the street, and yes, when you're not invited or welcome to be there, so to speak, when it's not expected, you need to be more bold to do that. You have a compromise now. Okay, either be bold and make a strong frame, or you don't. You shrink, you disappear, you're scared, you don't get close, you won't make a strong image. So you have to be bold to be a street photographer. And again, I know when a lot of people either say, oh, I don't get street photography, or I struggle with it, or I don't see a picture. There's pictures everywhere you walk on the streets. The fact is, it's converting what you see as interesting into an interesting frame. And getting close for me is 101. Do that, and you're on the way to becoming a much better street photographer. Be bold, get close.
Yeah, you've got to get close. Now, just in quickly talking about that, be bold, be close. I've got my camera with me, X Pro 1. I use the 35mm lens on this, so like I suppose 50mm equivalent on full frame. And that, in actual fact, is another gives me the sort of to get in closer rather than having an 1855 or an 18200, whatever zoom range you want to consider, where you can be a little bit lazy and a little bit sort of stand backish as you go. So again, getting the equipment to a degree is right, but that said and done, of course, iPhone is ideal, but you've got to get into the action to start making your street photography interesting and different from the mundane which we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wrote a few things down when just before we hit record there about the subject, of street photography. Is it killing itself? And one of the things I wrote, was that that we are, as photographers, are only as good as our last image that we shared. And this kind of goes head to head with regards to the idea of being constantly on social media. That a lot of people need to consider why it is they're sharing their images online. We feel compelled to share work often because we want to build traction, we want to build a name, we want to become notorious, we want to become well known within the street photography community, whatever the case may be. There's going to be a dozen reasons why you share often. Maybe you just enjoy sharing. What I would, however, encourage people to consider is that think about diluting the idea that if you are going to share an image every day for 6 months to a street photography group, are you sharing dross or are you sharing only your best work? Because we are only as good as the last image we shared. And I'll go through periods where I'll share a picture every day for a week, and then I might not share anything for 2 weeks. And that's not me being lazy. It's not me not being disciplined. It's not me not in the habit of it. But if I look at my work and think, I'm not happy with anything I've got here today that I'm going to share, I won't share it. I only want to share what I consider to be my best work. What about you, Paul?
Yes. So exactly the same. In actual fact, I was asked this question at the weekend: how many photographs do you reckon out of this session will you call keepers? And I said, well, I'll be lucky if I say 10%. And really, I work on that ballpark figure. But then really at the end of the day, you're probably looking at 5% that are really worthwhile sort of considering to publish. And there are times you'll go out. Yeah, there won't be any.
Well, another thing I wrote in my top tips in the second part of that was expectations of your own efforts. There will be some days where you can be on the streets for 10 hours and not produce a single image, and that's acceptable for me. I'm happy with that. Yeah. Well, I'm not happy with it. Of course, I want to produce work every time, but it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all.
I think another thing is, in actual fact, when people go out to do street photography, they don't go out with a purpose. They just go out to shoot everything and anything that's walking past. And I think that's another mainstay problem. Again, I talk about projects. If you're going to go out shooting and you want to make a real quality and get a good performance of street photography and produce some quality that you can publish, I think it does help if you go out with a mindset and say, right, okay, today I'm going to be looking at maybe two, maybe 3 projects. 3 is a bit pushing it, but certainly 2 projects in your mind's eye to say, I'm going to concentrate on taking photographs for me at 1/15 of a second, which I just love to do.
Yeah.
That's one aspect. On the other one, as we've talked about it before, as a pure example, I'm going to take some photographs of people using their iPhones. So 2 projects which basically you can work on and concentrate on, rather than, there's a nice girl standing there, there's a nice fella there, there's a nice couple walking past, and you're switching around all over the place, and you don't get that, what's the word I'm looking for, that finite work that you need to be looking at.
I think your senses can be overwhelmed if you're not refining what you're looking for. A couple of sort of ideas, if you're listening to this now, would be, I don't know, people with beards or facial hair. Look for those. people with
Yeah.
hats, people on their smoke break, those sorts of things. And I actually touched on this briefly. I did a series of photographs, and I know you and I have talked about this very briefly as well. Sort of in the winter months in London when it was pitch black, with my Olympus OMD, which, as many people will argue, isn't traditionally known for its low light prowess. However, I actually found it almost easier to photograph at night, not because it's more interesting or anything like that, but because I am limited to only photographing subjects that are illuminated. So whether they are illuminated by a shop window, by their phone, by the lights of a bus or a car or a moped going by, on a train, I can't just brush shoulders with someone in the street, turn around and get a picture of them because they're in darkness. So it really did limit what I was able to actually capture. There might be something or someone really interesting in front of me, but if it's pitch black and there's no light, no quality of light, I haven't got a picture. So
and it's amazing it's amazing the photography you can get by using that practice. And something which I noticed, I took my Yashica out and my Nikon out with some Acros film. The images that I got were very, very sort of high contrast, a lot of black, and just that little flash of light from the windows and the buses and that sort of thing. Put those up on 500px, and they are the best response on street photography of my other work, because it's different, because it is different, and it does make you work in a different way.
I agree. So we are starting to run on time a bit. I know we sort of agreed that we would.
Very close.
Should we do a quick fire? Should we do a quick fire? Couple of pointers for people who want to get into street photography, or people who are already street photographers but want to improve their work. Got any tips?
I just want to mention one thing I would say, because on the back of last week I got these. You saw me getting the delivery of my new printer, which I'm absolutely amazed by the work. But just one photograph I just want to show you here. Pure black and white, superb tones. That was taken down at Brighton as an example. Print your work. Print your street photographs. And put them in a book here. I've got this book from Gusti off eBay, not eBay, sorry, through Amazon. Amazon, and you just stick your photographs in there, and it's great. It's a great little notebook to work on. So build projects and print your work would be my first tip. Your tip, Michael.
If you're photographing a person, have them look at you, engage with them, unless of course your intention is to be completely covert and not have them look at you. But when you look at a picture of a person, it's more engaging if that person in the picture is looking back at you. So eye
contact is a very good point in street photography. If you're taking photographs of people, if you get eye contact, you've got a concentration into that photograph straight away.
It's engaging.
It definitely is engaging. Another tip, it's not really a tip as such, I would definitely say to be prepared to experiment. Don't be frightened to think that every photograph has to be in focus. Look at doing something different with regards to your camera. Play with the controls. Don't just stick it straight into automatic program mode and shoot away. Slower shutter speeds, big depth of field, short depth of field, whatever you want. Just experiment with your street photography. Something is going to grab you and you say, that's my style and that's what I enjoy taking.
Okay, one last tip from me then. Slow down.
Yes,
that's my next
fantastic
tip as well.
one.
I know that we have had this discussion before, you and I. We often get a really good conversation going when we're out on the streets and we find ourselves marching around, and then we sort of stop and go, we've been chatting for 10 minutes and we just walked a mile. Have you taken any pictures? No. So slow down is the next thing. Not only because, of course, you're going to have more time to look around, but if, for example, you see someone really interesting coming towards you, you have more time to prepare your settings. It's just makes sense. It's logical. Slow down.
Yeah, I think that a nice couple of few tips that we've given to the people on the subject of street photography, and it's not going to be the demise. I think these articles are basically just to sort of trigger people's interest, pique their interest, to sort of say, hey, come on, step up to the plate. Let's improve the work that's actually being blogged out there, for argument's sake. So
street photography is misunderstood, I think, because I think many people think it's an easy discipline. As I mentioned there, it's on your doorstep. Step out your door, it's there. Sure, you can take a dozen pictures the minute you step outside your door, but making it an engaging picture, an interesting picture with value, with purpose, that is the challenge. And I think that's where many people trip up. I think they're fooled into thinking it's an easy thing to do. It's not.
No, it's not easy. Definitely. And crossing that boundary, as the guy said to me at the weekend, he said, I don't know whether I'm ready for this, to step over that line to start taking street photographs. And I said, well, and on we went, away we went. And he took some good shots.
It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone, is it?
It isn't for everyone. No, very true. It's not. It's not indeed. Michael, good to talk to you again. Next week, we've made arrangements. Fingers crossed, if everything works out fine, we'll be up in London on Tuesday.
Bar, right?
Back at the Polo Bar. We'll get ourselves sorted out there.
Hankering for one of those custard tarts. They're delicious. Those custard tarts are amazing. Yeah. So we'll include a link to the Polo Bar's website in the comments below this video as well. Or if you're listening on iTunes, we'll include a link there. The Polo Bar 24. It's in Victoria. It's fantastic. Open.
Liverpool Street. It's Liverpool Street.
Sorry, Liverpool Street. Did I say Liverpool? Did I?
Yeah, no.
Don't travel up there looking for it.
Don't go there.
Yeah, but it's open 24 hours a day, which is great. So hopefully next week we'll be there recording an episode live.
Exactly right. Let's get ourselves organised, and fingers crossed that our personal sort of days don't sort of.
The diaries,
make it the diary and etc. Okay, Michael, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And for everyone else, we obviously got all the blog sites, cameraaspects.com, where we've got the regular blog. We've got a group on Facebook, Camera Aspects. It's the group there which you can join. We'd love to see you on that to join in the conversations and post some photographs up, and maybe give us some tips and ideas, or maybe some complaints. How about some comments and complaints about what we're talking about? That'd be good to hear from you. We've got Twitter at Camera Aspects on the Twitter, where you can.
It's the same on
join
Instagram.
On that front.
Yeah.
Same on Instagram
as well.
Instagram, Camera Aspects. So join us and follow us, and we'll be very keen to hear what you have to say. Have I covered everything there? I think I have.
I think so.
Like us on YouTube and iTunes podcast, and I think Stitch is coming soon. So I think that's all bases covered.
I think
Michael, you got to get back. You got to get back to do some work this afternoon.
Yeah, some mundane stuff. Yeah,
I'm going to do some printing. So I'll see you soon. Thank you everyone for watching, and this will be up on iTunes very shortly. So all the best to you. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye bye.